Coming up next on Public Access TV is Fan to Fan, the book game, where we look at the game of publishing books. Today my guest is Tom Hall, educator, senior softball player, and author of 4 crime mystery novels. Stay tuned. These read fast and they'll keep you guessing. Welcome to Fan, the book game. I'm your host, Dave Hornfischer, a book fan, and I'm excited to look at the game of book publishing, where we talk to people who get their book ideas into print and those who help them. Today, my guest is fellow senior softball teammate Tom Hall, a retired educator and author of 4 crime mystery novels. Tom, welcome to Fan. It's great to see you here.
Thank you, Dave.
Why don't we, before we get to your books, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you developed your writing skills and your ideas to put stuff into print.
Well, I was born on Long Island, New York, and lived there until I was about to go into my senior year in high school. My dad was worked at LaGuardia Airport in air freight, and he got transferred up to Logan. Wasn't the best situation, I was thinking, going into my senior year in high school and having to make new friends and all that. But looking back, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I went to, you're trying to impress new people and so forth. So I was a pretty good student, but I really buckled down and had a really good senior year academically. But more than that was that Weymouth High had an indoor track program. And as a matter of fact, we ran outside because they had the vocational technical school there had built a wooden track there, banked with banked corners. And I had been pretty good at track, but the 600, which was an indoor event, was perfect for me. Mm-hmm. And I did really well my senior year, and some college coaches took an interest, and I was offered a full track scholarship to Northeastern. Uh-huh. I don't know that I would have gone to school. I would have been able to go to school. Yeah. I have 4 siblings, all younger. We didn't have much money, but I went, and I started out majoring in science. Then I switched to social studies, and then finally to English. I think when the dean saw me coming, he ran the other direction, figuring I was going to change my major again. I think I always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't know if it was in the card, so to speak. But and that's what happened. I graduated from Northeastern and went to teach at Quincy High School in the English department. I was there for 7 years, and then I went into administration after that. Never thought about writing novels, certainly, at that particular point. That was just too daunting. There was no way. And then, interestingly enough, after I became an administrator, it's a 24/7 job. So the thought of, again, writing, even if I had been an interest, there's no way to do that. So I didn't start writing novels until after I retired. And
they often say if you retire when you're young enough, you'll have the energy to do something different and build on what you've been doing a little bit. I mean, that kind of happened to me.
Right.
And
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's true. It's interesting.
You always had this kind of in the back of your head, maybe, that you could do this? Or?
Not really.
No, okay.
Not really. No. The truth is, I was out working in the yard one day, and this idea popped into my head, and I said, okay. I went inside, and I wrote the first chapter.
Of one of your mystery books?
No, this was before that.
Okay.
I wrote this. I wrote that book. It was called Something Else Entirely, and it was almost like I needed to prove to myself that I could do it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did that, and you talked about the writing process. One of the problems for me was, because you didn't know what you were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. The outline was almost as long as the book, I just went on and on and on. Oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I got to do that. And then I realized with the second one that I did, which is very different from the first one. The second one was, as my daughters who read it, once I finished it, said, Dad, this is chick lit. And since I'm not Nicholas Sparks, I decided I need to move to something else.
Okay.
And they say you should write what you know, but I didn't know anything about crime and court situations and things like that. But I knew what I liked, and I liked Michael Conley, and I liked Harlan Coben, and I liked Lee Child, and I liked Jonathan Kellerman. And so I decided that, that's the direction I want to try and go.
And so that led to your first book that we have a picture of your cover on it here coming up that was called Hidden.
Yes.
So how did you, when you put a book together like that, where did that cover come from?
That was from the publisher. The
Okay,
publisher,
so the publisher made
did
the
that.
cover.
What I did, so people know, you have to decide in a sense when you're going to write, I think, a novel or a book. What's your purpose? What do you hope to get out of it? And for the vast majority of people, if it's fortune and fame, you're in trouble because that's not going to happen. But that's not what I wanted to do. I just felt like I had a story to tell, and I felt almost compelled to write. And so when I had finished it, I started to take a look at, where could I get it published? I wasn't about to hire an agent because that's expensive, and again, that wasn't what I was looking to do. So I found this, I should say, there are a couple of companies that will accept unsolicited manuscripts, or at least the first chapter or two. I sent it out to 3 of them. 2 of them said they wanted more. I sent that out, and then they both offered to publish it by a program called subsidy publishing, where they encumber 85% of the costs, and the author does about 15%, which was a little bit more than it would cost to self-publish. So that's what I went with.
Okay, so this wasn't self-publishing then? It was
No, the first 2 novels that I wrote
when you
were
self-publish it,
self-published.
what do you do?
You contact
Your printer.
a
Really?
number of different companies, and they tell you how much they're going to charge. They don't do any editing.
Okay.
Some of them do the cover, some don't. It depends on.
But this publisher, whose name again was what? Was it?
The Brighton Publishing
Brighton,
Company.
yeah.
Nothing connected with Massachusetts.
Oh,
Brighton.
okay, yeah.
They're out west actually, and again, it's subsidy publishing. They do 85% of it. Now that 85% includes, they do all the editing, but you have the final say. They send it back to you and say, here's what we're recommending.
Okay.
You don't have to do it. It's up to you what you do. They create the cover. They do some publicity, but not a whole lot, because that's really where the tough part comes in.
Okay, so they don't put you on the radio or get any of that kind of stuff.
No.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
the first book comes. So you've done these other 2 books. You get the idea of a mystery series, and the first book comes up, and they call it Hidden, and you come up with a couple of lead characters. How did you, who eventually are going to be in all 4 books,
right.
But at the time when you did the first one, you probably didn't have the other 3 in mind, did you? Or
no,
did you have the idea?
No, when I was finishing Hidden, I wanted to make sure that I left the ending a little open so that I could, if I decided to go and do another one, that there was an opportunity for
you didn't kill him off.
No.
So
and I had to still be around.
So you have just tell me. Why don't you just talk briefly about the 2 guys that end up here, Munoz and
I don't even know where the names came
Walker.
from. Just Craig Walker and Dave Munoz, and again, I have no idea.
Walker's an FBI guy, and you even created a program in the FBI.
Right. Yes. From watching TV, I don't know if this is accurate or not. Although I'll tell you a little story that would suggest it is. When you're watching TV, sometimes it appears that the FBI, when they get involved in a case that's local, that they kind of take over. And I would think that the local police don't necessarily like that very much.
Right.
So I had Craig Walker be the poster boy for cooperation. And so that would make it easier that he could show up later on after he's retired, because the FBI wants to encourage this image that they're good people. It's funny, I have a friend of mine who's a softball player. We played on tournaments together, and he is a retired FBI agent.
Oh.
I didn't base this on him. His name is Dave.
Oh.
I said to him, because he read the book, he was going to read the book, and I told him that, he's that the character is a very cooperative FBI agent. So he says, "Oh, it is fiction. Then. It is fiction." So, maybe that part is true. I'm not sure about that.
And then you blend him with a local detective.
Yes, and I wanted to make him a good guy too, in a sense. And he had, excuse me, his first experience was in Boston, and so I wanted to have him to be a top-notch guy, because he's back out in the suburbs now, where you wouldn't expect there's going to be a whole lot of crime necessarily, or the type that he would be investigating. But since his background had been in the Boston area, then it lends, I think, a little more credibility to the notion that he would be able to help out in terms of solving these things.
I mean, I loved reading the books. Just to state this to the viewers here, that you gave me a copy of the books, and I read through them all, and I just loved them, which is I've got to have Tom on my show here just to get going with this. And then you created these fictional towns, right, in Massachusetts.
Yes.
I was looking on the map for a couple of them.
No,
Couldn't find them.
You're not going to find them. No.
No election results from those towns.
No.
And then a plot line came together. So we haven't. And so you do the first book, and that one was called Hidden. What was sort of the story on that one?
It's again, what came to me. It's a germ of an idea. That you have a young boy who's missing, and then it starts that they have to try and find him. That's why the FBI is brought in, because they suspect a kidnapping has taken place, and so that's why the FBI is brought in. Okay. But then after that, it escalates into there's more behind it than that. And as I think I mentioned a lot, this is what I like to read, and so I tried to put into the books all of the things that I like about mysteries. Okay. That there's twists and turns. Things are not just thrown into the lap of the detectives. They have to figure stuff out. I like that cognitive aspect of it, and therefore I have to extend it some more. As we've talked when we talk books sometimes. I don't like a whole lot of description. I don't think you need it. You don't need to know what they had for breakfast in order to.
You're not a writer that makes you want to smell the mustard on the hot dog.
And no. That's not what I like to read. As I said, I'm very plot oriented, and
They had lunch.
I love the notion that they go about figuring stuff out.
Right. Yeah.
I like that part.
So that first book, and then we have a picture coming up here of the covers of the next three, all involving these same three guys. And so you did them in the first one. You said now it's time to do another one with these two guys, right?
Yes. And the second one, Nothing As It Seems, it's a little different. It's about a female serial killer, which is unusual in itself. Okay. That's not the demographic that you're going to see.
You had an argument with your wife probably before.
And then I did No Loose Ends, which is a little bit more personal. Walker has a daughter, and a friend of hers has gone missing, and they get involved in that. Now, Munoz, in this instance, comes to help out on his time off, because he doesn't live in the same community, and so he wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the switch. In that one, I went to a little more CSI type stuff, involved in that a little bit. So in each one, I think they're different in different ways.
So let's give a little talk a little more about each one of these. We'll put up an image of the cover on each of these now. And you've took a lot of technical expertise in some of these things to do this. As I'm reading this, I said, How does Tom know about that?
Yeah. Well, the internet is a wonderful thing. Yeah, if you remember, in each of the books, there's a court case. There's court going on. I don't know anything about arraignments, and I don't know anything about bonds and bail. But you can look all that stuff up, and that's that's what I do. I think that you know.
So let's put this one here, and Nothing As It Seems. That was the one with the.
It's interesting with all four of the books, and this was purposeful. You know who did it.
Right. Yeah.
Right at the beginning,
yes.
you know who did it. It's I mean, a lot of authors can keep you guessing until the last few pages as to who the perpetrator is. I think that's a lot more difficult to do, and to do well, than this. But again, my emphasis is on the two investigators figuring things out. Okay. So I don't care that you know who did it. But the intriguing part for me is how they figure it out.
Yeah.
So, and each one of the ones you do know, No Loose Ends, which takes place primarily in Maine. As I said, you know who the bad guy is.
Yeah.
But
as I was reading it, I said, "Oh, I figured this out already." and I kind of said, "Well, that's an odd way to do a mystery book." But then I said, "Well, but the detectives don't know because they don't know what because you described the bad guy on."
As I mentioned before, what's interesting, sometimes I know that authors will be asked, where do you get your ideas and whatnot? And, in each of the books, I have to say just a germ of an idea, and I mean it, very microscopic, came into my head, and then you just build around that. And I can't explain it. I really can't. If I could tell you, the only one I guess I could say, the one that takes place in Maine, which is
you
No
were pretty
Loose
deep
Ends.
into Maine in that.
With No Loose Ends, I think I read a thing that there was a minor earthquake in Maine. It was like a 2.0 or something like that, and that got me through it. And I did a little research and found out that
the barn got crumbled. And,
but that Maine was. That Maine was actually part of the Underground Railroad.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, well, I could use that somehow, that, somebody's keeping somebody there, and the Underground Railroad gets collapsed when anyway. As I said, it's a small idea, and then all of a sudden things build from that.
I kept wanting a map of Maine, and I was reading. Wait a minute, where are they going now?
I know.
Yeah, with all these.
Well, I kept all of the towns in Maine. Those are real.
Yeah, I know.
Those
that's why I looked on the map. And then the last one, The Switch, is a lot of medical stuff.
Right. But again, you can you look that stuff up. It's very easy to.
Why didn't Walker and Munoz look it up, right?
Yes. Right. And the thing, this was around the time there was so much talk about Ancestry.com and genealogy and so forth, and so I was able to incorporate that into the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got these 3 books or 4 books now with these characters. Am I going to get to read more about them?
I don't know.
I kind of like them,
Yeah, I do
want
too.
them on my softball team.
I do too, but I don't know. I'm working on something else now. I'm not quite done. It's a historical novel.
In Massachusetts?
No, it takes place in and around New York City, Long Island. It's
where you grew up.
Yes, it's somewhat biographical. Although it takes place it begins in 1894 and goes all the way into the late 50s, and the prime character for a long time in it is my great-grandmother.
Oh, okay.
But you don't know that at that time.
Is it a mystery?
There are some elements to it, but it's more of the intertwining of these characters with actual historical individuals and what's happening at the time, and how it affects their family and things like that. So,
yeah, and mixed in with some real history then.
yes, yes. You know, for example, Teddy Roosevelt is in it, and a woman by the name of Lillian Wald, who was an activist during the 20s and 30s, and Jacob Riis, photographer, very famous photographer, who had a picture book called "How the Other Half Lives," which is an expression that we now have on, and Jackie Robinson is in it, and so and it's how, but you can't force it. You can't force these people to be part of somebody's everyday life. But
and as you said, without a timeline, they kind of flow into it probably as the story makes it work. Oh, I need some more. Okay. So about how long does it take you to put it? I mean, when is it? Are you getting faster with? Was it easier to do the fourth book with Walker and Munoz than the first one, or
yes?
And now you're on to something different, so it's probably a little longer, right?
This is much longer.
Yeah.
The mysteries took me about 7 months to write, which is reasonably quick. From what I understand. This one, the historical novel, first of all, is longer, and second of all, there's a lot more you have to do, because when you've established characters, you know how they're going to act in a certain situation, and you can move it along.
Right.
With this, that's not the case. You know, so and I, as I mentioned, and process is a little different too, because I write everything out in longhand.
Okay.
And then I use voice recognition software and
You read
speak it into the computer, and then I go in and edit it. So that takes a bit of a time as well to do it that way.
So you're keeping your manuscripts for the family history, your original handwritten,
No.
scribbled out?
No.
What was it? Jerry Seinfeld, I think, still has all of his comedy bits.
Yes, I think that's true. I remember that.
Yeah,
right.
all the scratch outs.
I was thinking,
and draw this.
the Gettysburg Address is on the back of an envelope, but no, I didn't keep any of that stuff.
No.
No,
You're not going to will that
gone.
to some museum someday.
No, I don't think anybody's going to want that.
So, do you have any idea of? Are you working with the same publisher on the new book?
No, actually, I'm going to probably use Amazon. Amazon has something called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, and I'm probably going to use that. It's a little easier in one sense, and not quite as expensive. So I'm probably going to go in that direction.
So as a writer, you do have a fair number of choices out there these days of ways to get your ideas together. We've been talking about that with Lynn Damianos, who has a business in Framingham, and the last writer that we had on mentioned 2 or 3 other ones where she went. So.
You know, I don't know if Lynn said this, but you know, with nowadays there's good news and bad news, and it's both the internet. The good news is anybody can get anything published. The bad news is anybody can get anything published. You know, and with regular publishing, all right, there are 65,000 books, novels, published in the United States each year.
Novels alone?
Novels alone. 65,000 novels published in the United States each year. How do you get noticed?
Well, I know. How do you get it? Yeah. So did you get your books into Barnes and Noble at all? Or?
Yes, but you know that almost doesn't exist, and Framingham is losing.
Well, they moved. They moved.
Right.
Yeah. But it was daunting to go into a store and see a book and one copy maybe, and it's buried somewhere way in the back.
And they couldn't stock. They couldn't stock bestsellers completely. Never mind, you know, something like I've done. You know, so it was very hard.
So then, where do you try to sell your books?
Well, they're all on Amazon there, and I have to say the reviews have been very good. They're all 4s and 5s, which is very rewarding. And I don't know if it's just settling, so to speak, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of people having read the book and saying that they enjoyed it, because I know how I feel. When I've read something that I really enjoy, it's given me, you know, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours of pleasure. you know, doing that. And if other people are getting that from something I've done, that's all I need in a sense. It sounds self-serving, but all of any royalties I've made, I've donated to charity. You know, that's not why I'm writing. So
Netflix hasn't come to you and wanted to make a series out of this.
Not yet. Although you know, I think they would.
Is your publisher apt to help you do something like that, or?
They would put me in contact with some people, but it's just such a long shot, and you know, I don't know. I think they would make good movies. I think they would.
I would have.
But so you know, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, if you're listening, you know.
There you go.
Maybe
They'd be a perfect pair. Yeah, then we'd finally find out. We'd finally find out what your two guys look like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what have you know? You've been at this now for what, almost 10 or 15 years, I guess, right? And
longer. Longer. Yeah. It's, 17.
And what do you like best about doing this? What's sort of the
completing it? You know, honestly,
well, once you start it,
yeah.
Are you somebody that's compulsive and when you get writing a chapter, you want to write and all of a sudden it's 3 in the morning, or
no? I don't write every day. I know a lot of writers, a lot of authors do that. I don't. I think that it's important to write when you feel it, in a sense. You know, you can't stay away from it too long because you lose the thread, you lose the pace, you lose all of those things.
Yeah.
But no, I usually try and set aside at least an hour to an hour and a half to write.
Okay.
But other than that, no. I'm just. I don't feel compelled, as I said, to write every day. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. At least it isn't for me.
Yeah, and you probably need a time in between books. Then you give yourself a little.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to say, after I finished Hidden, I wasn't sure I would write another one. I wanted to leave the option open, so the end of it allows that to take place. And that would be the case of each of them. I didn't think that I would be writing the one I'm currently writing.
Right.
I thought that I was, you know, I'm done.
Yeah, or into mysteries, yeah.
But then, as I said, this germ of an idea hits me, and I say, yeah, I got to follow through on this.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time here. We're going to put a picture up here where people can find these 4 mystery novels, which are very compelling reading. I personally just enjoyed reading it, and Amazon.com or play softball with Tom, and maybe he'll give you one. You know. And anyway, Tom, you've been a great guest, and thank you for coming on and talking about these terrific books. And folks out there in TV land, come back and watch us. We're on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays in Framingham, and the shows are on the Access Framingham website, and you can also find them on YouTube under the Dave Hornfischer Fan to Fan channel. So thanks for watching. Come back and keep reading books, and look for Tom Hall. These books are good. Let me tell you, I enjoyed them. And thank you, Tom. I've enjoyed this discussion even more. So, thank you. Bye.
Thanks.